Kevin Durso covers the Flyers for 97.3 ESPN.com. He's at Kevin_Durso on Twitter. He's got his Flyers Canadiens preview up, and he's here to preview it with us right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Flyers coverage brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Kevin, it is the day of the Flyers' first, playoff game in a while here. Let me ask you this. Do we know if the game is still set for the time because of the overtime in game number 1?
As of right now, it is still set for 8 o'clock tonight. Everybody's keeping a close eye on the Washington-New York Islanders game right now. 2-0 Washington late in the second period. That's a good sign, but let's not try to get too far ahead of ourselves with everything, with the way it's gone in the last couple of days.
Do we have an update on Voracek's availability?
Well, Alain Vigneault was still very quiet about his line combinations and who was available today, but Voracek said yesterday that he's good to go. So I'm going to assume he's in the lineup tonight.
All right, so it looks like Voracek's out. Any other changes to the lines or any of the pairings that you see happening leading into this first playoff game that we did not see in the 3 round-robin games?
Not necessarily. I don't believe there's much change going on at all. I think Shane Gostisbehere is probably going to be the defenseman who's in the lineup. That's my firm belief on it. Again, Alain Vigneault is being very private about his line combinations for the game, but nonetheless, I think Gostisbehere earned himself the opportunity to get back in the lineup, so I would expect him to play. The big question kind of is if Voracek is able to play like we think he is, since he said he's good to go, where does he slot back in? Because Alain Vigneault has talked several times about how he's felt about Joel Farabee moving up to that top line and how they looked in the Tampa game specifically. So I don't know that I expect a change there. I think Voracek might even slot into the third line on the right wing side. Nick Aube-Kubel could move over to the left side on that line. James Van Riemsdyk would drop to the fourth line, and I'd expect Connor Bunnaman to be the guy who comes out of the lineup with Voracek coming back in.
Carey Price can obviously steal a series, and he's phenomenal. But do you think, even if he's at the top of his game, that this Canadiens team, when it comes to the players, the defense, and the offense, can hang with the Flyers? I just feel like they're so deep that the Flyers should be able to take care of business pretty easily in this series.
Yeah, I think that the thing with the Canadiens is that if they can continue the momentum that they've had, then they'll have a shot in the series. The thing with the Flyers is that it's play your own game. You know, if the Flyers just stick to what they've done against the 3 round robin teams, then they can beat anybody in the league. And I think that they can make this series look relatively easy if they can take away Montreal's big key to the game, which is their transition play, their speed through the neutral zone, and good zone entries. If the Flyers play incredibly stingy defense when it comes to protecting the neutral zone, not allowing zone entries quick in transition like that, and if you take that part of the game away from the Canadiens, then they're going to have trouble generating a lot. They've had some success before against the Flyers this season. I mean, all 3 games between the Flyers and Canadiens were close. You had 2 of them that took overtime for the Flyers to win, one where the Flyers were not able to win the game in regulation, which was a rarity. It was a regulation loss on home ice of all things. That was a very rare occurrence in the season, but that was back in mid-January, and the team was very different from what they are now. And I think that if you look at the team now and the way they've played all of these top teams, they stick to what they've done well. Then even though Carey Price has the ability to steal 1 or 2 games out of any playoff series, I don't see Montreal being able to succeed in the series over the course of the duration of a series, given the fact that the Flyers should just be coming at them in waves if they're able to stick to their game.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to bring up to you is the fact that, they got Price. I mean, of all the options they had to play, I mean, was he the netminder that you'd least like to see, but on the team that you'd most like to see?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Carey Price is still one of the elite netminders in the game, and I think that he's got the ability to steal games, no question about it. But there was something about, even in that series against Pittsburgh, when Montreal would stop playing that physical, hard on the forecheck, using speed to get into the zone, Pittsburgh was able to come back at them and score quickly on them sometimes. They would have quick tallies that would turn a game at different points. I mean, Montreal led game 1 2-0, and eventually that game went to overtime. Pittsburgh took game 2. In game 3, it was back and forth, and Pittsburgh actually had a 3-1 lead in game 3 at one point in time before losing 4-3 to Montreal. And then obviously the last game was a totally different story. The last game was the one where I think they locked everything down. Pittsburgh was out of sorts and only got 21 shots in the game. But otherwise, Pittsburgh was able to have their way offensively for most of it and just got maybe into some bad habits, maybe not the depth on defense that the Flyers have, and that leads to opportunities for Montreal. So I think if the Flyers continue to have the depth they've shown throughout these these round-robin games and stick to their game like they have, then they'll be able to generate, and I think Carey Price doesn't become as much of a factor when you're still creating as many chances as the Flyers can create.
Do you think that they need to change anything on their power play, or do they just need to stick with it and eventually it'll naturally find its way?
I think they can stick with it, honestly. I mean, the last couple of games, they've done some things that are positive that show that it could be close to breaking through here. And I think this is a situation where with so much else going right for the team, if they can get one to go, then I think that it could open up the floodgates here. I mean, really, they've got a lot of potential and a lot of talented players on that power play. And I think that if they can get one of them to finally go here, especially against the team, Montreal's not the high-end special teams opponent here. That's one of the areas where the Flyers should be superior. If they can turn that power play around, then Montreal's really in for it, I think, in this series. I think that that's going to be just another wave of pressure that comes on Montreal that makes them difficult to keep up in this series.
How much of an impact do you think Shea Weber is going to be? That's someone who went through some tougher times after the trade from Nashville to Montreal, but it seems like he's ready to get back going on the right foot.
Yeah, he was one of my storylines for the series because it wasn't long ago that we thought that his career was left for dead. The trade happened where he goes to Montreal, major trade that shook up the hockey world, PK Subban to Nashville, Shea Weber to Montreal. And he had a good first year with them, but after that he played just 26 games the following year, 58 the next year, and they were starting to experience what life was like without him, and he still had a lot of years left on that contract, and it felt like it was a loss in the deal for Montreal at that point because they had a player who just wasn't able to stay healthy. But he's gotten healthy this past season, played in 65 of the 71 regular season games Montreal had, highest goals and point totals since the trade happened. So a lot of things that were not going right for Shea Weber have started to go right. He's become that blue line contributor that everybody remembers him to be, the perennial all-star that was out there and very well respected around the league, usually a mainstay on Team Canada and international events, things like that. I think he's back to close to being that player again and has really brought a veteran presence to Montreal's blue line that went a long way in that series against Pittsburgh, and it could go a long way in the series against the Flyers, too, if they're able to put up some pressure on the Flyers and make this interesting.
By the way, you guys remember when Weber was in Nashville and that whole story about how the Flyers were like this close to getting him, like how pumped up people were to get him? That seems like it was so long ago, and how disappointed people would be now if Weber, because he would inevitably was not going to live up to the expectations. But by the way, the Islanders just scored to make it 2-1. But let me ask you this, Kevin. Kevin Durso covers the Flyers. What did Montreal do so well other than Price to allow them to beat Pittsburgh? Did Pittsburgh just not play very well, or was there something that Montreal did that maybe should have Flyer fans a little concerned?
I think the first game was all Carey Price, in my opinion. I think that they really survived that game more than anything. But once they stole one, and it's one of the things I think that's big about tonight's game is Game 1 can give you a lift in big ways. And when Montreal took Game 1 from Pittsburgh, I think at that point in time, I think it was in the heads of Pittsburgh a little bit. I think it was in the heads of Montreal, too, that they felt they could win that series. And Pittsburgh was thinking, this could be dangerous here. And it starts to creep into your mind that, this is going to be a much tougher series than maybe you anticipated. So I think the first thing that's going to have to happen for the Flyers is come out and treat this Game 1 as a very important game, which I don't doubt that they will do. I think that they will. It's just, I think if you come out and you take Game 1 and you get that edge, it makes a big difference. What Montreal did throughout the duration of the series, once Carey Price stole them Game 1, I didn't think that they looked particularly great in Game 2, which Pittsburgh did win. It was after that I think they started to become a resilient team that kept making things interesting. I think that they managed to hold Pittsburgh at bay with some of their top guys. That top line looked really good for Pittsburgh. Crosby had a solid series, but Malkin did not. And I think that was a big part of it, too, is that when they started to silence some of the big players that Pittsburgh had, you gain confidence. So if they start to silence some of the Flyers' big players and it doesn't translate to other scoring, that's where the depth comes into play so much. If Sean Couturier and Claude Giroux go silent for 2 games in the series to start, but they're still getting the contributions from the depth like they had before, then I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal for the Flyers. I think it will be a big deal if the entire team goes cold, and not only are you looking to your top players, but the depth isn't there to answer for that as well. And Montreal starts to gain some confidence out of shutting down their top players.
All right, Kevin, the Flyers entering this year were not thought to be cup contenders. Halfway through the year, playoff team started to look good. Then the break comes. They're playing their best hockey. They get into this round robin. They get the number one seed. So are we concerned about overlooking Montreal?
I don't think so. And one of the things I wrote yesterday for 97.3ESPN.com was that they won't take this series lightly. And the reason why is there was a game back in January where they lost 4-1 to the Canadiens, and it felt like a game. I mean, they had just beaten Washington, Boston, and St. Louis in a matter of 8 days' time. And they came out the very next day after beating St. Louis in overtime on the road and lost 4-1 to Montreal and didn't look like the same team at all. And some of the players after the game admitted it's hard to gain that motivation and have that emotion when you've played 3 really emotional games in a row. And Alain Vigneault's answer was very funny kind of way of saying it. He just goes, that word that starts with B, and denied that there shouldn't be that motivation factor needs to be there for every game. There's something that matters in every game, and there's nothing really separating teams. And I think that that's a great message here, because I think everybody overlooked Montreal in that qualifying series against Pittsburgh, thought Pittsburgh should be the team that comes away no problem. And Montreal put up more than just a fight here. They claimed that series pretty convincingly in the last couple of games. And now that they're going to face the Flyers, I think the Flyers have a reminder. Nobody's a pushover in the playoffs at that point. You've made it here for a reason, and you've got to get up for every single game. So starting with this game 1 tonight, they need to be ready to go, and they need to show that they're the same team that just played those 3 games in the round robin so well, because that's going to set the tone for the rest of the series.
We talk about Carter Hart's focus and preparation all the time. Do you think that it intensifies going up against his idol in Carey Price?
I don't think it does for him. I think we're making more out of it than he would or anybody else would. Alain Vigneault kind of said today, let's not forget it. This isn't Carter Hart against Carey Price. This is the Flyers against the Montreal Canadiens. And let's not make it more than what it is with the goalie matchup. I mean, there's a lot. It's probably the most intriguing storyline, and we can definitely get caught up in it. But I don't think that there's anything to it for him. I think that Carter Hart's going to go out there and play his game the way he has before. And I think that he proved that in the 2 round robin games he played. He had talked about how he wasn't going to treat it any differently than any other game. He went out and played Boston and then went out and played Tampa Bay and won both of them and looked great in the process. So I don't think that there's anything that's going to change for him. I think we're all focusing on a lot of things with it, because it is Carey Price, who's an all-world goaltender in the other crease. It is the guy he grew up idolizing. They both have birthdays coming up. Hart turns 22 tomorrow, and Carey Price turns 33 on Sunday. So, we're thinking of all of those things, and it makes it a great story. But it doesn't – I don't think it means anything to Carter Hart. I think he's just focused on helping the Flyers win games and try to get past the first round.
Kevin, you've been covering this team for a couple of years now. You've been with them for the ups, the downs, and as you wrote today, they were a team in total disarray. They fired the coach. They fired their GM. How have they become the number one seed?
I think it was making 2 really important moves to the front office, and then going ahead and getting some of the right players, get in there, and then buying into the system. It really started when, it's funny, 622 days before they clinched the top seed on Saturday, they fired Ron Hextall. And I think back then there was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of anger from the Flyers fan base. This was not the team that they remembered for all those years that went out and did what they had to do to try to find a way to be successful. Even if it didn't always mean the end goal of winning the Stanley Cup, they would at least, they'd make deep playoff runs. They'd get to conference finals. And that wasn't happening anymore. And it was a lot of talk of patience and waiting for these prospects to come up. Ron Hextall did a lot of the legwork here with this team. He drafted a lot of the players that you see, but ultimately when they brought in Chuck Fletcher, I think Chuck Fletcher put some of the finishing touches on this. The Kevin Hayes signing, trading for Matt Niskanen, Justin Braun, Tyler Pitlick, bringing some of the other prospects into the system too. Carter Hart comes up 2 weeks after Chuck Fletcher is hired, and Alain Vigneault gets hired after last season to come in and be that veteran head coach with 2 other veteran head coaches on his bench too that make a big difference and help to put a system into place and put a style and an attitude into place that really says that nothing short of success is going to be tolerated. They want to go out and they expect to be successful and they expect to compete in every single game. And that's what they've done. I think that you've seen everybody, just about everybody, I think, has grown in some capacity. That was either a draft pick of this team, someone, like Phil Myers, who was undrafted, who has turned into an NHL regular and is playing some big minutes against the top competition in the league. it's all started to fall into place. And I think the reason it didn't get off to the fastest start at the beginning of the year is because it was a new head coach and because it was a lot of new faces, and they had to learn to play with each other. And right around that point in January, they turned a corner and haven't looked back. And that's why they're where they are. It's exactly why they're where they are. It's strange to say because it's something I never would have thought I would have said. It's definitely something I've never said on the airwaves with you guys before. They're favorites in a playoff series right now, and they're expected to win this series and expected to be a threat in the playoffs. And that's something that hasn't happened for several years.
What do you think of Bro's get-up?
Looking good. He's all flyered up, ready to go. I think that's the way a lot of people are feeling today. Not only are expectations starting to go up, but excitement has gone up. And Alain Vigneault said today that in this global situation that we're in, everything that happened with the pause, to be able to take a few hours to sit back to watch one of these games and give the fan base something else to think about and something to be excited about, it seems well worth it. And I think that that's a great way to look at it. This has been something that's been missed. I think Flyers fans were disappointed when everything was paused because of how well things were going. And given the fact that they came back and didn't miss a beat and have come back and now claim the top seed, the excitement is just back, and it might be even more amped up than it was before the pause. So that's great to see, and it's warranted the way that, Bros is representing the way a lot of people are feeling, I think.
Now, let me ask you this. On the Zoom call post-game, do you go suit?
They don't see us, so I don't go suit. So if they saw us, I might have to.
I was wondering if you're watching the game from your couch with a suit on.
Yeah, maybe suit, but with these shorts on. Because a lot of people now, when they're working from home on these TV shows, why not?
He's a respected journalist.
No. A lot of these respected journalists, now that they're from home, they go half up.
Yeah, but he might have a pair of shorts, but not those shorts.
Oh, I know Durso has these shorts.
No, maybe
I guarantee it.
Maybe he goes blazer, tie, cowboy hat, and cowboy boots.
Well, that's probably in play as well.
All right, Kevin Durso will have coverage of the Flyers and Canadiens on our website. He'll also be tweeting away at Kevin_Durso. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk on the hotline. All right, man. Talk to you.
All right. Thanks, guys.